In this tutorial, I'm going to show you a really cool way to light products using multiple exposures, and the end result is you get high-end looking studio quality shots on images that were lit using one single light. Now, the images can be created using continuous light, or they can also be created using flash. So you can see this example here. I take an image of the background, an image of the inside of the bottle, another exposure for the front of the bottle, and a final exposure for the label. And then those four images are merged together in Lightroom and edited, and the final result is this high-end looking shot that looks like it was lit using multiple exposures. So you can see here, I've shot this at night. So I've got a f4 4-second exposure, ISO 100. And then what I'm going to do is I have a Godox AD200 with the modeling light on. And basically I take the first exposure for the background. Then I take another shot of the label, and then I take another shot using the Gary Fong. You can see the technique that I'm using. So you want to keep the light moving for the entire time. And basically what I've done here with the Gary Fong is I've added some gaffer tape to the sides of the Gary Fong just to make the interior there narrower, so I can run that light up and down the back of the bottle. So that's going to give me the inner glow there. So you can see that the tape there just makes my light source a little bit narrower. So that's simply the modeling light off my Gary Fong, which is a nice neutral light. And I've used that to create my light source there for the bottle shots. And then I can also take a shot of the label as well. And then all I need to do is merge those images together. If you're working with a flash, the technique is similar, but you're using obviously a higher aperture, and you can also shoot in daylight and basically stop down until your image is dark. And what I've done for this image is it's f8. Shutter speed 1/200th of a second, ISO 100, and I'm using an octabox. So the Godox in an octabox, and basically I just take a series of images. So there's one which is backlit to light up the liquid in the bottle. I've also taken separate images of the label and of the edge light, and also of the cap. So it's a whole lot of images taken together. Now, how many images you take is entirely up to you, but this gives a very high-end look to bottle shots, highly reflective shots. And so here's an example of the lighting to create the beautiful edge glow. So I've placed a black strip in the middle of my octabox, and that will give me the lights coming from behind the bottle there and light that up. And then also I've changed the softbox to the Gary Fong grid, and I've used the grid to light the front of the bottle to get a nice crisp looking label in this image. All right, to create a light painting using continuous lighting, what you need to make sure that you have is a good sturdy tripod. This is really important. It's super important that you don't move or knock the tripod with the camera on it, because otherwise you're going to get the images are not going to line up properly, and it's going to be a lot harder in the editing. So good sturdy tripod. And with continuous lighting, what you want to be doing is shooting in a dark room. So like I did these at night, or if you've got like nice thick heavy curtains and you can block out all the light, then you can do it in the daytime. But you do need to have a dark room to shoot with continuous lighting. Now, The first thing you want to do is turn the lights on so that you can actually get a focus. So I would focus on the label of the bottle using autofocus on my camera, and then once I've got the focus, I switch the autofocus off. And this means that every shot I take from here on in is going to have the same focus plane, and that is really important. So get your focus and then turn your autofocus off, and this is locking the focus. Again, make sure that your camera remains steady. If you've got a flimsy tripod, you might want to add some weights to it to make sure that you don't easily knock it, because it will make this a lot more difficult. Now, as a starting point, f8 at a shutter speed of 4 seconds ISO 100 should give you something that works. Now, you want to find some source of continuous lighting, so a torch or an iPad will work, or any sort of little small light that you can use. What is important is that when you're brushing the light on, pretend like you're actually painting light. So what you want to do is keep an even motion and make sure that you're moving the light the entire time that the shutter is open. So if you've got a 4-second exposure for the entire 4 seconds, you're going to choose the area that you want to paint and just keep moving that light around and around, and then go on and take multiple frames. So you'll do the label, you'll do the interior, you'll do the cap, you'll do the backlight, and you can do the background. Now, how many images you take is entirely up to you, but you might want to experiment with maybe just a couple of different exposures just to make sure that you're on the right track. So that's continuous light. If you're working with flash, again, you're going to need a sturdy tripod. Now, the difference with flash is you can shoot this at any time. You can shoot it at nighttime, daytime, doesn't matter. What you want to do is, again, make sure that you focus on the bottle and using your autofocus, and then turn the autofocus off. So essentially, you've locked the focus. And again, you want to make sure your camera is super steady. A good starting point for flash would be f8. A shutter speed of 1/200th of a second at ISO 100. Now, again, the lighting and exposure times are going to vary depending on the flash source. You might be using a large studio flash, you might be using a small speed light. So that's going to influence the power output and your exposure time. So I suggest you maybe start at something like a 1/4 power and work up or down from there to get the right exposure. The difference between shooting light painting with flash and light painting with continuous is you can now hold the light static because you're doing very short durations. You've got 1/200th of a second, so it's actually very quick, the flash. So basically you can just hold it in place. So you backlight, front light, light the label, light the cap, and again, take multiple frames and be very, very careful that you don't knock the product or the camera out of register. That's super important. All right, so once you've done all of that, let's have a look at combining the images in Photoshop. All right, so I've gone ahead and selected 4 images from my continuous light painting. So that's where I was painting with my Godox AD200 using the modeling light, and I also had the Gary Fong grid spot there on the front as a modifier. So I've got the first exposure is with the grid lighting up the background to give me an interesting light in the background. Then I've got the second image is lighting up the cap and a little bit of the interior of the bottle. The third image is lighting up the label, and the fourth image is the interior glow. Now, before I go ahead and merge these images in Photoshop, what I want to do is just make sure that I've got the correct white balance. So what I'm going to do is come back and select my original background image, and I'm going to come into the basic develop module. pick my white balance color picker here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the wall because I know this wall is white. So that was what I was shooting against. So I'm going to get my white balance off that wall. And now I've got a nice neutral image here. I'm not going to do anything else to this image, but what I am going to do is I've got that first image selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and bring it all the way to the fourth file. So now I've got all images selected and I'm going to hit sync. And basically I'm telling Lightroom that I want all 4 images to have exactly the same white balance. And so you can see that they've all, as I click through, they're all at 3,550 Kelvin, all the same. All right, all exactly the same white balance. And that's important when you're merging images together. And you can see that they're also all shot f8 ISO 100 4 seconds. Exactly the same settings, and the bottle is in exactly the same position for all of them. Now what I'm going to do is select all 4 images, right click, hit edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. All right, so there are all my images all stacked one on top of the other, we can see. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just bring the background one and drop that down to the bottom of the layer pile. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the top image here, which is the cap has been lit and a little bit of the interior. This is where it gets really cool. This is so simple and the effect is amazing. So basically what I'm going to do is change the blend mode from normal to lighten. Have a look at that. It's like magic. Okay, so basically what I've done is now Photoshop is going to show the lighter pixels are going to come through. So I can now do this again with the next layer, and it's as easy as that to create a beautiful image. So we've changed that blend mode to lighten, and that's picked up the label and a couple of little highlights in the middle there. I'll go down to my third image and again change the blend mode to lighten, and bang, that's the background. And it's as simple as that. That's all you need to do. Now, if I had been a little bit more careful with my grid spot here and had have hidden it better behind the bottle, I wouldn't need to retouch this out. But you are going to need to do a bit of masking for this. So what you can do is, I know it's this layer here, right? So that's what I need to get rid of. So basically I can come in with a layer mask, bring my foreground color to black, get myself a nice brush, and I'm going to increase the hardness. Okay, so it's got a nice edge, and I'm just going to brush out that little corner there. All right, so just carefully brush that out. And it's as simple as that. All right, so there's the edge. And I can also come in and get rid of this little highlight here. So you can now go through each little spot and just tidy up the bottle. All right, so just get rid of some of those little highlights. So that's that layer there. Okay, and I can also come in and just tweak it if I want to in any other little areas. So you can see just by using that blend mode, lighten, a couple of very simple little masking techniques, and you get something that looks pretty amazing. So one light and we've managed to cover this bottle from all angles. Let's have a look now at combining an image using flash. Okay, to combine an image using light painting with flash, it's a very similar, exactly the same technique basically. So what I've used here is I have used my Godox AD200 flash with an octabox, and also I've used the Gary Fong to light the label. So I've got the octabox to light the background and the edge light, and I've also used the octabox to light the front and the camera left and camera right. So again, first thing I want to do is just make sure that I've got a good white balance setting, and then I'm going to select all the images and hit sync. So now they're all the same white balance and exposure, and you can see it's 1/200th of a second, f16, ISO 100. All images were shot using the same exposure. So to merge these images in Photoshop, I'm going to hit right click, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. All right. That'll take a second just to crunch itself. All right, so Photoshop is now going to open all those images and organize them in layers. There we go. All right, so before I do anything, I want to make sure that the images are all exactly aligned. So what I'm going to do is select all the images. So select the top one, hit shift, and select the bottom one. So all those layers have now been selected, and I'm going to go edit, auto align layers, and hit auto, hit OK. And so then if there's any slight little knocks, like if the camera moved at all, this is going to make sure that everything is absolutely lined up and you won't have any issues. So worth doing that when you're laying up the images to merge them together in Photoshop. So that's now aligning all the layers. All right, and then what I'm going to do is make sure that my base exposure is down the bottom, and I'm going to have my background exposures above that. So there isn't any real need to order them in any particular way. I just find this is the easiest. All right, so I'm going to start with the top layer, and I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to lighten. Okay, and have a look, you can see that that's brought in the light that is camera left. See, so I've now got two even strip boxes, so already the shot is looking so much better. Then I work my way down to the next layer, and again change the blend mode to lighten again, and so now I've picked up these beautiful edge lights are coming through here. Next layer, hit lighten again, and we've just picked up the internal glow. Now you can see that there are issues with the light, so you're going to have to come back and use a layer mask just to get rid of any little highlights that don't look like they belong. So that's really important, but let's just get everything assembled here. So again, next level. So this is all looking lovely. We've got that lovely glow in the bottle. Another one here, and we're done. So that's all looking good. So what I can do now is, what I'm going to do is come up to this image here, and I'm going to get my object selection tool. So this is a new tool in Photoshop, and basically what it does is if I draw around my item here, my bottle, it's going to select it for me, which is very handy. All right, it's done a beautiful job selecting that, and now I can mask that image, and that's going to get rid of that background. I'm going to do it for all of these. I'm going to do it for this one as well. So just come in and mask, because I don't want my octabox to be the background for this image. So I just want to mask out the bottle, and this is a really easy way to do it. All right, and now we just need to do this one here. All right, there we go. So now I've got my grey background back, which looks good. And so now you can start to work out what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of. So if I toggle on and off on my first image, you can see that that's the highlight camera left, and the it runs all the way down the bottle. So if I bring in a new layer mask here and I brush with black, what I can do is I can just kind of clean up that bottle there and just clean up those little highlights. See how it just gets rid of them and it just looks a lot slicker. And then I can come down, create a layer mask here, and this will be the camera left side. See those highlights there? So now I'm going to just brush those out using a black brush and just clean up that bottle top there. All right, next layer. Let's just turn this on. That's my edge glow, so I'm happy with that. But what I might do is just knock back the opacity a little bit so it's not quite as strong. All right, and then let's come back to this layer here. So that's the background light. That's all looking okay there. And let's have a look at this one here. All right, so there's a lot going on there that we can get rid of. So I'm going to come in and just with my mask, come and tackle these areas. Make sure I've got a nice soft brush. All right, just get rid of those highlights there. Just bring back some of that orange where it's a little bit burnt out. And so you can see how you can selectively adjust and clean up the image and make it all look pretty sexy, really. So the other thing that I'm looking at here is that I want to try and get rid of this white background in the bottle. So I'm just going to hunt for which layer that is. And I'd say it's one of these two. So here it is. So now I can come in and with a black mask, just come in and mask out that white background there from my bottle. So now I've got a clear background. And that's pretty much it. So you just work your way through using the layer masks, and basically the sky's the limit as to how many layers you can do. You can also come in and create a new adjustment layer on the top of that and come in, and if you wanted to, just sharpen the label and get everything looking the way that you wanted to. So that's two ways using flash and continuous lighting. This technique can be used for food. It can be used when you do portraits where you might have one light, but you also want to add a light to the background. So if you're using a tripod, you can lock off your exposure, you can light your subject, and then you can do a blank plate of the background where you might want to light up the wall. You can use it for backlighting food, products. There are so many uses for this technique. So have a go. It's so much fun, and this is something that you can do, while you've got some time and you're quarantining. Enjoy.